Hey, Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols, and I'm here today to bring you more than a nickel's worth. And more than a nickel's worth means this video is going to be more than 5 minutes, and it's also going to feature more than me. We have Father Jonathan Resmini right here on my right, and below me, we have the amazing Timothy Frisch from a Frisch Perspective. I'm sure you all know exactly who he is. He does some amazing stuff, has some amazing content, and it's really an honor to have him on my channel. It's great to have both of you. Why don't you both just take a second to introduce yourself? Father Jonathan, let's start with you.
My name is Father Jonathan. You can just call me Jonathan. It's okay. I am a pastor, priest at Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Tim Nichols and I have developed a friendship through some of the Facebook groups, and he invited me to do this. I have my PhD in practical theology and spirituality studies from Boston University, but I have a little bit of background in biblical studies and language studies as well. So this was a beautiful opportunity for me to actually talk in real life with Tim, because we usually just talk on Messenger. So this is actually our first time communicating face-to-face online.
Yeah, two Tims and one Jonathan. So we'll see how this works out.
Yeah,
all right, Tim Frisch, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Tim Frisch, and my last name means fresh. So I have a YouTube channel that I call a Frisch Perspective, which I guess in a way means a fresh perspective. And I, on my YouTube channel, give analysis, reviews, and fun that I always say is from a Christian nerd's point of view. So I am a Christian nerd, and I have the glasses to prove it. So I've actually been in ministry for a long time before I got into doing YouTube videos. Worked at a church for 18 years, but I still am involved with church and church ministry. But now I do a lot with YouTube videos. Gotcha.
And of course, I'm Tim Nichols. I'm actually primarily a senior pastor at Lakeside Worship Center in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. I met both of these guys online through our Bible community groups, which is really just amazing to be able to meet people. And I absolutely love Tim's channel. I watch it every day, and or at least every day he posts content. And sometimes I'll even watch the entire ad just to make sure you get some revenue out of that. So that's always.
Thank you so much. I always love to hear that.
Yeah. So anyhow, let's just dive in. Today we're going to be kind of talking about translation philosophies. I did a translation philosophy video recently, and it really kind of garnered some attention. And I know that Tim has done a lot of stuff in that same vein as well. And of course, Jonathan, knowing Greek, I think he is a great asset in this aspect too, because you actually do services in Greek.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you read fluently and speak fluently in Greek.
Well, I'm conversant in modern Greek, but I can preach and teach in modern Greek. And generally speaking, my biblical Greek is dictionary fluent. So if I don't know a word, I can figure it out.
Right. So I think that this is going to be exciting to be able to talk about our favorite translations and textual criticism and its role, translation philosophy, how far is too far, and then just kind of answering some questions about, does that complicate things when it comes to conducting a public service? So let's start off. First of all, what is your favorite translation? Jonathan, what's your favorite translation, and why is it your favorite translation?
So I've never had a conscious decision. It was kind of happenstance that brought me about to my favorite translation. It tends to be the New King James Version. One of the reasons was, again, happenstance. The Orthodox Study Bible, which is the only complete text of the Orthodox canon in compiled in a way that's consistent with the tradition, available in English. It's not the best translation, and the notes are okay. But that New Testament is a New King James Version New Testament, and the Old Testament is a modified Old Testament adapted to be more consistent with the Septuagint, which is in the Orthodox churches, received Old Testament tradition. And then I just kind of got into the habit of reading from it primarily. And I like the study notes that go with it and the textual critical notes that go with it. So you kind of get a sense of all of the conversation that's going on. And the traditional text, the Textus Receptus, is very close to the New Testament text, which is the standard across all of the Orthodox churches around the world, which is the 1904 patriarchal text, which is in the Byzantine text tradition. It's a little different than the majority text or the Byzantine text kind of broadly, and it's not quite lining up exactly with the Textus Receptus, but it's fairly close. Textus Receptus preserves some of the same omitted passages that are not found in some of the earlier manuscripts, which are prioritized sometimes in the critical text, but it preserves the critical text through the notes that it has. And then there's no real great Old Testament for us because, as I said, one, we do use what's the so-called Deuterocanon or apocryphal text as part of our Old Testament. It is part of the canon of Scripture. It's even placed within the Scripture in the Septuagint ordering. And then there's no exact complete text of the Bible other than that Orthodox Study Bible, which has both. So that's kind of what led me to the New King James Version, but generally speaking, I read for most translations. That's just the one I have the most of and the one that I probably memorized the most. The interesting thing is, though, our lectionary is the Revised Standard Version in English. We will read it in the original 1904 Greek patriarchal text, and then we'll read it in the Revised Standard Version, which doesn't make sense, but it's just what we chose.
Right. All right, Tim, what's your favorite translation and why?
I don't really have a favorite translation. I've heard good things about the Passion Translation lately.
Oh my goodness, he went there.
Yeah, oh, I'm just kidding. Mike Winger on his YouTube channel, he's been talking about the Passion Translation. He calls it his passion project to talk about why he doesn't think people should be using the Passion Translation. So I don't actually use that, but I actually like Jonathan. I do like the New King James Version. However, I tend to go with a dual approach to having a Bible translation. I think it's really good to have one more historic translation that's rooted in the heritage of the English language and the literary quality that's there. So that's why I like the King James and the New King James Version. But then I also like something that is modern, that is not confined to the phraseology that we've had from past translations. Because I find that if you have a translation that, for example, is taking Psalm 23:1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. To me, I either want it to sound like the King James, or I want it to sound much more clear in the way that we would express it today. And I would argue that saying today, I shall not want, doesn't make a lot of sense to most people if they're not familiar with the Bible. So I'm a little weird that way. So I tend to go with something like the New King James for historic and something like the Christian Standard Bible for something modern. That also has the luxury of giving us the Textus Receptus, which was talked about before, but also the critical text. And both of those translations have good footnotes, so you get a transparent view of what you're looking at in some of the original manuscripts. And then also along with that, you have the luxury of having something that's more literal, which I think the New King James is quite literal in its approach. And then the Christian Standard Bible, which is less literal. And I think that's important because language has a formal aspect to it, the way you say something, but then it also has a semantic aspect to it, just the way that you hear something, the force of the language. And unfortunately, it's really hard to get both of those aspects from one language to another. So that's why I think having two translations that are complementary are good. So I'm going to go with the New King James and the Christian Standard Bible as probably the top two for me.
Yeah. My favorite translation is the ESV. And the reason I like the ESV is because it's kind of King Jamesy. I actually love the Yoda talk in the ESV because I really believe that it lends to greater poetry in my mind. I love the way that the poetry reads in the ESV, and I love that it's one of the more literal translations. I've read the NESB and I found it just a little clunky to read. I even tried the MEV. I don't know if y'all have heard that translation, but it's kind of like an offshoot of the King James. And it's just, I made it Jeremiah and finally gave up. I just could not finish it. It was too difficult to read. I really do like the King James, but I don't like the way it slows me down. I have to look up words and like your Westminsters and some of your Trinitarian Bible societies, they'll have the archaic words defined, but I feel like that slows me down, especially in preaching. So the ESV is kind of my sweet spot. However, in 2021, I am switching to the New King James to preach in. So that may actually win me over. The McLaren, which this is actually the preaching Bible, my McLaren's off for a rebind, has really won me over with that layout. That layout is incredible. So now I agree that you do need a second translation to kind of bounce off of. So actually what I do is I go to the complete other extreme, is whenever I am struggling with the ESV or a more formal translation, I will move to the NLT and just go all the way to the other end of the line where it's almost not a translation. So that's kind of where I land. But anyhow, so ESV is just my jam. I find it easy to read. I find it having that quality that you need in order to be able to feel like you're kind of reading the King James and having that traditional English, as Tim mentioned, but also being able to read it, being able to understand most of the language without a dictionary. So that is my absolute favorite translation. I always find myself going back to it. Preached out of the NASB for a year. And boy, I was glad when that year ended. Also, that was the year COVID happened, so I take responsibility for that. Hey, everybody. So that concludes the first session where we kind of deal with our favorite translations. The next session will be posted probably in a few days, and that will be dealing with translation philosophy. Thank you so much for watching. And again, God bless you. Keep calm. Jesus on.